pointing to the idea of better sleep, I think one of the key things that people ignore, and it's quite simple, is the idea of a routine. If you can get down to a routine that you say, I'm going to go to bed every day of the week at a certain time, your mind and your body gets geared towards that. So it's you who decides that. You want to establish a routine so that your body knows that every 10 o'clock every night, then I'm settling down. And then you create the environment around that. And you've mentioned a little bit about this before, that enables you to get a deeper sleep and not go into a disturbed level of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your sleeping environment is also very important. It's not to be too cold and not to be too hot.
Let's learn how our next guest gets up, dress up, and show up on purpose. Enjoy the episode. Mr. Hennessy, hi.
Hi, Lunide.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going brilliant. Great to see you.
You too. It's an honor. Thank you for taking the time to join me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I just reminded myself by looking at that you did a half triathlon, half Ironman. That's what I remember.
I did. Have you?
I did my first ever marathon. And that actually plays into some stuff we'll talk about. It was because I got a phone call in 2018 from a friend of mine who I've done a lot of hiking with.
Okay.
And he said to me, I'm thinking about doing a marathon. And I said, yeah, I've been thinking about that too. You know, everybody has that kind of story in their mind, but I'm not a runner. I've never ran. And he called me, it was March the 7th, 2018. He said, well, I want to do a marathon and I'm going to do it in Greece, the original marathon.
Wow.
And I said, I'm in. And it was November that year, November the 11th. So I trained between March the 7th and November 11th. And I finished the marathon and I was like totally stoked that I did this.
That is exciting. You did what no one has been able to do. You did it in a short period of time, the training.
No, I didn't. And actually, I kind of, shall I say, ignored all the other stuff I read on the internet about how you should train because it didn't work for me, Lunide. Like what I essentially done, I'm making it very simple. There's a lot of stuff, but I compounded the distance I could run. The first day I ran, which was that was a Monday. On the Wednesday, I ran for the first time. I did like just over a mile, like 1.7 kilometers. And then I was like, wow, this is not that easy because I never ran. Like I wasn't not a jogger or nothing. Like I carried a big backpack and I've gone through the Alps. Like I've did the same friend, him and I have already traversed all the French Alps from the bottom of France to enter into Switzerland. So I'm comfortable with that kind of movement, but I'd never done the idea of running. But I just thought this would be epic to run from the original marathon and then to get to Athens and enter into the old Olympic Stadium, which is where it ended. So, and actually being able to continue walking afterwards because a lot of people were on the ground and I saw people on the ground on the way too. And I learned a lot from this experience. And it actually ties into my morning routine.
Good. It changes your life. Marathon and triathlon gave me a new perspective. One, I got to know my city a little more personally because I'm running 20 miles around my city every weekend. But also it transcends into like life and obstacles and challenges. Like, oh, okay, I can do 6 miles with no problem in under an hour. Okay, what else can I do? It builds that mental capacity to know that you're confident enough to tackle other things. That's what running did for me. And
the swimming, how about the swimming? You learned to swim? Because I can tell you a swim story, but I want to hear your swim story. Not that I'm interviewing you, but I was like...
David, let me tell you, I was 32 years old and from Haiti, and in the Caribbean, a lot of people don't know how to swim. I don't know why. Really? It's bizarre. Yeah, in the Caribbean, a lot of us don't know how to swim, although we are in the water. We have beaches all surrounding us. But I was 32 years old, have never swum in my life. And I was like, I want to do a triathlon, but I don't know how to swim. So this will give me a reason to learn how to swim. So I signed up I signed up for the race before I signed up for the swimming class.
That now sounds like me. Like I signed up for the marathon, registered and everything, bought the plane ticket, and it said, okay, I better figure out how to run.
because the commitment's already there. So
Yeah.
now the brain is like kicked into high gear of like,
Hmm.
oh, we got to do this. We got to learn this. Oh, we're going to drown. We're
Yeah.
not going to come out and finish the race. So I had to be able to swim a little over a mile, and I had to do it in under an hour.
Yeah.
And so I had never swum before, and I think I had 2 months to do it. So I was swimming at the YMCA with the 5 and 6 year olds. Okay. And
Sounds like I would be doing that too.
I even, my first day, I think I had a wetsuit on in the pool
Oh, wow.
because I needed to float. I needed to help. I needed help floating. So that's
Yeah.
how it started with the YMCA. And then I gradually went to the 13-year-olds. A month later, now the race is approaching. So I was like, I need to go swim at the rec center where the people who I'm competing against are swimming. So I'm going to the rec center, and I think I had 3 weeks before the race. And I showed up, and my first day there, the swim instructor said, Lunide, you're too slow. You're slowing everyone down. Okay. I was like, I'll get better, coach. I'll get better. So I showed up the next day. And as soon as I showed up, he comes before I even get in the water, he was like, Lunide, this is the director of the rec center. We really cannot have you in this class. I was like, but I have a race in 3 weeks. What am I going to do? I need to learn how to swim, and I need to
Hmm.
make it through this race. He was like, I'm sorry, you're going to have to learn elsewhere, but you cannot do this. And this is at 5 a.m. I'm getting out of bed at 4 a.m. to go swim 5 to 6 before I can make it to work for 7 o'clock. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm getting shut down and rejected and telling me I'm not welcome here because I don't know how to swim. But at the time, I didn't take it personal. It was just another
Yes.
obstacle. It was just like, okay, well, I need to learn how to swim. So I showed up the next day, and they escorted me out
Oh,
because I would not
really?
give up. Yeah.
What's that? Politics in the rec center? I mean, I won't
Yep.
even touch that one. That's amazing.
I got escorted out, and then I was like, all right, I need to figure out. I'm down to 2 weeks and 4 days before my race. I need to figure out. So I went back to the YMCA, and I started swimming on my own in the morning, and then taking the class to perfect my form. But I learned how to swim. Race day, I showed up. It was cold. It was up in California, and I finished
Where was it? Pardon me. What water were you in the sea?
we were in the bay. In the
In the
bay. We
bay.
were in the
Okay.
bay. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I went in swimming. I came out. I think I finished in about 55 minutes.
Okay.
Just enough time to continue on. Because if I didn't make it in that time frame, I couldn't continue with the 56 mile, with the rest of the Ironman, half Ironman process. So that was huge success. I learned how to swim within 2 months to compete a 70.1 mile race that I had heard of maybe 2 months ago.
And that really shows you demonstrated to yourself, because that's what it's all about. It's not to other people, what you're capable of. Because when I find that you can do just about anything once you have the motivation. I mean, I learned French not because anything beyond having the motivation so I could communicate and hear and understand my children, because they're bilingual. And they used to always speak in French with their mom and between themselves. More importantly, the conversation they had between themselves was in French, and I was clueless. When
Yeah.
I moved to France, I didn't speak any French, and I felt so isolated. So I decided I was going to learn how to speak French and understand it. So I didn't take any classes. I
Oh,
just learned it through conversation.
good for you.
So
That because it's not an
yeah.
easy language to learn either.
No, but I think the French people, in my experience, are very forgiving. They appreciate that you're trying to converse, and then well, you would know about this too, and some of your listeners as well, is that the brain is amazing at what it's absorbing from all around you when you're driving, when you're
Yeah.
listening in conversation. You wonder, how do I know that? Because it's picking up a lot of information, which is a good thing and a bad thing, as you know. If you're
Mhm.
around toxic stuff all the time, depending on how you define toxic, could be anything. That's what you're absorbing, even if you think you're not. Like,
Yeah.
I remind people that if you listen to music or read things all the time or watch movies all the time that are really not beneficial for you, you're embedding that into yourself.
Yeah.
You may think you're not, but you actually are. So
Why?
it's very
Why do you
important how
think
you use
that?
your mind.
Why
Why
do
do
you
I
think
think that?
that? Yeah.
Oh, I believe that like I say, that we all have the capacity to learn from what's going on around us. And we're very much, even though we think only as children, that children are like sponges, I think as adults we are too.
Yeah.
And I think that like a lot of people say, well, it's harder to learn a language as you get older. Well, that wasn't the case for myself. I had the motivation. I think the
Right.
difference between adults and children is that children rarely in their minds, Lunid, have the voice going, I'm not capable of doing this. This is not possible. A child wants to be an astronaut, it wants to be whatever they want. An adult says, I'd like to be an astronaut, but I don't think I can. Well, who told you that? I don't know, but I don't think I can. And that voice continues in their head. So when the world around us, there's lots of choices all the time that we make. And if we let ourselves be exposed to things that are working against us, it can be very destructive. And me personally, when I was very young, I was very, shall we say, introverted, very shy. I couldn't speak up until I got older. And with the creation of the Wonder Technique, I had a burning desire to share. Plus, I had something valuable that people wanted to hear.
Yeah.
But before that, I mean, I didn't speak up. And now, like when I'm at an event in France, it's quite hilarious, actually. And there's like, I go to an event on the environment or something, and people say, anybody got a question? I got the hand up, and I'm not even the local native person. And they're like, they hear my voice, like, he's not local, but he's speaking in French. Okay, what is he saying? Like, so I now will even speak up when I'm way out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, there's something interesting you said, David, is the subconscious mind. We operate out of that space 95% of the
Oh, yeah.
time. So we are programming. We are deprogrammed. And
Yes.
so we are, as you said, listening and learning from our environment. People who have said things about us, people who are talking with us, who are feeding, almost like just like we feed our bodies, we feed our minds, our eyes, our ears, because that will come out. Because if somebody, kids, we're programmed, as you said, as an early on, we don't, they don't rationalize and says, I can't be an astronaut. But as adults, we might have heard somebody that says we couldn't do something, and then we translated and concluded that we're not enough. We can't do this. We're not good enough. And it starts to manifest in everything we do, like directing our behavior.
It's really quite tragic. To me, and the thing is that you asked me maybe if we have time, because I mean, I'm Irish, originally born in Ireland, so I'm genetically programmed to speak. So sometimes we can get carried away. But the idea is that how people say, I have a difficulty finding my purpose. And I believe we all have our purpose inside of us, and we are almost to, shall we say, I remember once I read, and you might know of, you may agree, disagree with what she's written, but Marianne Williamson, I read once in one of her books, she said that the thing that scares people the most, well, I'm paraphrasing, is what they're capable of doing, who they are. They hide their brilliance. And we're afraid to do, like, people know what their purpose is, but they say, no, that can't be it. Like it's like, what could it be? And then when I talk with somebody and we start to ask questions, I start to ask questions, they start to get answers from them. They're finding it on their own because it was already there.
Right. It's in there. It's innate. And that's a big portion of our show, is how do you find your purpose? Because I meet with people like you who developed the Wonder Technique, who found your purpose and then using it as a gift to bring other people along, to help and serve other people. And that's the point, is to kind of tap into what makes your soul happy, what makes you whole, and then utilize that and bring, don't not leave the world the way you found it, right? Make a difference in a way, in a way that touches other people's lives. And so finding your purpose, a lot of people struggle with it. I did for over 20 years. And I would just say, no, that's not it. That can't be it. Oh, I'm introverted. I want to teach. No, that's not right. I want to create a platform where I can talk to people. No, that's not it. And so that self-doubt creeps in, and then it stifles you. And in the minute you can't have love and faith and doubt living in the same space, right? Whenever fear kicks in, everything else goes running. Yes. And that takes over. And so I want to talk about your Wonder Technique and how you came about finding it and doubt living your purpose.
Okay. Ask me questions. I'm all here.
Yeah. What is the Wonder Technique?
Okay. The Wonder Technique itself at its core is a teaching acronym, but to backtrack a little bit as to how it came about a long time ago. 1999 was when it came about, and it came about just after. The exact story was in 1996. My mom went through 2 bouts with cancer. And what I discovered at that moment in time when I spent time with her, I wasn't the only person supporting her, but when I spent time with her traveling around to medical appointments, was I have the capacity to simplify complicated things. Because when she was told, David, how do I, the doctors would say, the naturopaths would say, these are certain steps you need to do. And when you're going through a lot of stress in your life, somebody who's going through anything emotional, relationship, physiological, it's hard for you to integrate things unless you have the tools already in place. That's a side avenue we could talk about another time, which I believe in the idea of resilience in advance. That's what I tell people. You have to be strong ahead of the time, but you have to have the tools in place. So back at that time, I already had a great curiosity to learn about things, and I still have that decades later. And as a kid, I used to have it. That was something I knew, that I always was very curious and I loved to learn. And I don't think I'll ever lose that. I think when they, if they put me in a box someday, they'll know I'm still there because I'll knock on it, and I'll go, I have another question. Are we still alive? We can't get that David guy out of here. But it's like, I'm constantly curious to learn. It doesn't matter what it is, because I believe everything is integrated together. That's why the Wonder Technique is a holistic approach to personal development. After my mom recovered, I started to kind of integrate the information that I learned and touched on when I was assisting her or being around her. But more importantly, I'd already finished my university work and psychology and everything, but nothing was really organized. I think it wasn't really organized in my own mind. So we're kind of finding purpose is the situation here, like what you talked about. But what happened was, one day I was sitting down and I was looking at all the materials that I had from journals, because when somebody gives me a piece of information, I want to know the science behind it. And I want to know, is it good research? Like if it's two people and they did it over 1 week and they asked the people their opinion on something, to me, that's not really that valid. Like I'm looking for a good source of information. So I looked at all the information I had on multiple parts for personal development. And I looked at, these are principles. The principles are the idea of the importance of rest, the importance of getting outside, the importance of hydration, our state of mind, the foods that we eat, our exercise, and they all come together. And I believe that you probably notice, having done something incredible when you've done a half Ironman, is that it was more than just about your body. It was more than just about your mind. You needed to rest. You needed to take care of your body. You needed to get fresh air. You needed to hydrate yourself. And I'm frequently sharing with people the whole idea that if there's an issue with one part of your life, it's related to all things. It's not separated.
That is true.
Yeah. So then the Wonder Technique helped me put together all this information. And actually it was for me because somehow, and I believe my mom was partially responsible for this. She, moms talk with other friends and stuff like that. And she put, yeah, and David was around a little bit and he helped me, and like, oh, people are really curious. So what was he able to do? And I actually started off by doing my first ever event, and I had no idea how I was going to present it. I was like a fire hose presenting information, which if you've ever been to an event where somebody has like a screen with, it's a page of writing, like it's too much information. You don't learn nothing. They're super passionate, but you're like, what did they say? And I quickly realized that I was speaking way too fast, sharing way too much information. People were curious, but there was no way they were going to retain it. So I created the Wonder Technique, which I'm going to share with you right now, is that each letter of the word wonder. Now it worked out to be the word wonder, which was incredible, because W is for water, O is for outside, N is for no worries, D is for delicious, nutritious foods, because people don't eat just nutritious food. It has to taste well. E is for exercise, and R is for rest. That was in 1999. And that, just if I can share with people, I know that you asked me earlier by email, what is my why? What is my purpose? My purpose is to bring everybody, it's actually kind of ties into your swimming, up to sea level on the principles of personal development. If I can share just that acronym with everybody, and they can say every day in the morning, no, I need to get outside. I need to drink some water. Did I have a good night's rest? Am I eating well? Like going through the acronym, and at the night checking in on that, they really have been able to see, okay, what am I covering? And they're taking care of themselves. So it relates to self-care and all kinds of things. Because if people want to, for example, meditate proper, and do a good experience in their mind, take care of themselves in their mind. If you're not eating properly, you would notice that neurologically you're out of balance. Like if your blood sugar spiking all over the place, if you're not well rested, if you're in a room where the air is stagnant, you can't meditate properly. I have never yet heard anybody who's teaching meditation talk about a holistic approach to meditation. And I talk about it in part of how I share with people is that if you want to improve one part of your life, you actually start to work on every part of your life.
That is the theme. It's almost like traditional Chinese medicine, right? Where they're encompassing the yin yang, the holistic aspect to it, and you're doing so with psychology and nutrition. That's what
Yes.
makes yours so unique.
Yeah.
Combining the two with nutrition, and I like the acronym. And let's see if I remember it. So it's water. It
Yes.
is outside. It
Outside
is
activity. Yeah.
outside activity. It is no worries.
Yes.
And delicious, nutritious food.
Yes.
E is for exercise and R is
Yes.
for rest.
Yeah, which encompasses sleep. Exactly, bang on. And when I've done events in that, people they get a copy of like a bookmark that I made with that on there. And there's a lot of stuff that's inside the Wonder Technique, Lunide, which kind of goes down like all the ebooks I wrote, the 9 ebooks that I have. It's kind of it's like taking a piece of it, like how to sleep well and wake up energized, how to focus your mind and become, achieve your goals, how to work on your concentration. These are all like pieces of it because I respect the fact that some people are working on one thing that's different from another person. So we might need to, shall we say, a tune up in a different area. But it's all interconnected because if you improve your ability to sleep, you improve your ability to learn. And if you improve your ability to learn, you improve your ability to adapt a new habit that you want to learn. Like it just crosses all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me as well how, unfortunately, it's surprising. Like when I've done some events and that, I always remember her name. When I think about it, her name comes in my mind, Mary. One lady who attended one of my events and I recognized her. At the beginning of the event, I always take the time, I show up early. I take the time to just wander around and meet and chat with people, which I recommend to people to do that, not just show up, at the last minute and run on stage. And I saw this lady, Mary, and I said, I recognized her. And I said, you've been here before? And she said, yeah, I have. I came before. And now this is, like, it's hard for me to say, but she said, I changed her life. And I said, that's not possible. How did I do that? And she said, because you convinced me through what you shared, the importance of hydration. I never thought it was important before. And she told me, now drinking water as a precursor, I'm not a doctor, don't pretend to be one, is not the cure for headaches, but she used to have headaches that were caused by dehydration. By her understanding the value of drinking water, those headaches went away. And what's most important about this, she was a nurse. She never knew in her training how important hydration was. So I don't make any assumptions that somebody comes from a certain background that they will have certain information. And the key is a lot of times I'm sharing with people, the secret is in the simplicity. And that's actually, you may notice this here, is very dangerous for people. A lot of people don't want the simple. They want the complicated. Like if a relationship's going too well, they're like, there's a problem. No, there isn't a problem. It's going well.
Let's jeopardize it.
Yes,
Let's jeopardize it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's lots of different things there.
Yeah, hydrating first thing in the morning is one of the habits that entrepreneurs, myself, my team, everyone adhere to because it's waking you up, but the brain you need that clarity. It's over 70% water. You need to put that back in there. And also, I want to talk a little bit about rest because so many people struggle with that. And the morning routine starts the night before. It starts with adequate sleep. It starts with preparing your subconscious mind. Thomas Edison says, do not go to sleep without giving your mind something to ponder on, your subconscious mind, because it's working. As we started this conversation, it's forever and always working for you and on your behalf. So don't give it a scary movie. Don't read social media before you go to bed because that's what's going to mull over for the next 6 to 8 hours. So,
we're on the same path here. I totally agree.
It's imperative that you're reviewing your goals. It's imperative you're being grateful. It's imperative that you're calming down and de-escalating as you drift into wonderland, blissful, so you can get what do you call it? So you can get chemical, so you can get recharged properly and effectively. So let's talk about sleep because a lot of people struggle with it. I ebb and flow. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's like, okay, 3 hours is all I'm going to get today. Okay, I'm out of bed. But it's so crucial because it ties into the whole wonder piece of it to kind of go full circle because you need adequate sleep so you can have a better morning routine, so you can show up better, think better. So tell us, how can we start like dealing with that,
I will tell you very, very happily. And actually you shared a number of things that I can totally relate to. And especially, I'm sure that you've seen photographs of Edison. He was a great napper. He didn't sleep so much, but there's photographs for those people listening, and I've mentioned this to people before, of him in his work shop sleeping on the workbench.
Yeah.
Or in his office, he has cots, sleeping cots he had, because he did exactly what you were mentioning. He knew how to sow in his subconscious mind an idea, and then he would go for a nap. Pointing to the idea of better sleep, I think one of the key things that people ignore, and it's quite simple, is the idea of a routine. If you can get down to a routine that you say, I'm going to go to bed every day of the week at a certain time, your mind and your body gets geared towards that. So it's you who decides that. You want to establish a routine so that your body knows that every 10 o'clock every night, then I'm settling down. And then you create the environment around that. And you've mentioned a little bit about this before, that enables you to get a deeper sleep and not go into a disturbed level of sleep. Mm-hmm. Now, your sleeping environment is also very important. It's not to be too cold and not to be too hot. So I think it's like 16 to 17 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 60, 65 degrees, 16 to 17 degrees Celsius, and then about in the 60s, mid 60s for Fahrenheit. I have to remember, because here we use, whereas every country in the world, we might be running on Fahrenheit or something. So not too cold, but not too hot. And that helps you engage sleep. Also being in darkness. I'm sure you know this too, complete darkness. And if you sleep in the same room with somebody who doesn't like the darkness for whatever reason, then you're going to have to pretend you're on an airplane and have a mask or something to block out the light, because when you're in the dark, melatonin rises, as you know, and therefore it engages all the mechanisms of sleep. And that's part of our biochemistry as human beings, because that's an alert system that used to wake us up. And we're really quite ancient as human beings. We still have a lot of habits, whether it's fight or flight and everything, that still exist, and you can't really pull out of your system. So to not give too much, but if somebody's listening, a routine, set up your environment that works for you, bless you. And also the idea that, you want to be in a dark room, and you also want to look at the idea of the temperature in the room and be prepared for that. So, if you find yourself a little bit cold, some people wear loose-fitting socks, some people put an extra blanket on their bed. And of course, your bed being comfortable is also really important. For some people, they need quality mattress. You're spending a lot of time sleeping, and it has a very, very important part of your life. Don't be cheap on your mattress and expensive on your car, or your vehicle, or your watch, or what clothing. Your mat is really important, because some people, I like a firmer mattress. It works well for me. And it's like, that's something that's important. So you have to respect your own needs on all of that. And then there's lots more to it. You mentioned something, and you asked me to talk about routine, and if it's the appropriate time, I will share with you, because I have a nighttime routine, which is the reverse of my morning time routine.
Yeah. Let's, before we dive into the morning routine. So for the nightly routine, there are different habits, right? Because habits are forming without our permission. They're forming to solve a problem for us. And we have the routines, whether we think we do or not.
Yes.
Whatever your ritual is, it's in place. And for some people, they want white noise. And for others, they want it totally silent.
Yes.
It's finding out what's yours, what works for you, and then actually doing that. And I agree with you. Invest in a nice mattress, because you don't want back pain. You don't want to be cranky. You don't want a neck pain. You don't, in a pillow, in a nice pillow too.
And it depends. Some people sleep with a pillow and some people don't. You have to, it's important. So what's the right position for you. Experiment. For some people, for example, over the years, I remember I used to sleep on my stomach, and I used to wait. I never realized there was a relationship between that and a pain in my back. But it was because the way my body is structured, my body doesn't like that. Once I identified that, the pain went away. So you pay attention to how you feel in the morning after you wake up, because the goal is that when you wake up, you should feel energized, not that you need to go back to sleep.
Yeah, I agree. My husband loves white noises. And to me, it's just that, white noise. I don't want to hear it. But I will try to get binomial beats in there, with get the brain waves working. Again, I'm trying to capitalize on the subconscious mind being at rest. I'm trying to capitalize on subliminal messages, right? Like getting those affirmations in place, because if it's going to be white noise, it might as well be constructive.
Yes. You're pulling in everything, and it's amazing what you're doing, Lunide, because you have access to all these tools, and we all have access to all these tools. Like the internet is an access pathway to so much information. And the challenge is that people have to decide what they're going to use.
Mm-hmm.
And not every, and I think that some people are just like, I just don't know what to choose. And they don't make anything decision. But the thing is, they're still making a decision. They're making a
Yeah.
decision not to change. And I share with people, like, if there's something in your life that you want to change, go into the future and think about what will happen in 5 or 10 years time if you never make that change.
Hmm.
Whether you need to change relationship, your finances, your work, anything like that. Go into the future and see how will you feel in 10 years time if you still have that challenge of communication with your child.
Right.
And then come back to now and you found the motivation. You
Mm.
need to have the motivation. And the motivation comes from inside of you. It doesn't come from anywhere else, because the motivation from outside of you will ebb and flow, people motivating you. No, like if when you want to do the Ironman, it's about wanting to do it. When I decided to do the marathon, it was because I wanted to do it. When I wanted to recover from the back injury I had, it was because I wanted to get over that experience and to have my body healed so I could live the life that I love to live. So
The
it's a decision that we make.
the power of the decision that
Mhm.
you decide. You burn. Tony Robbins says, once you make a decision, burn all the boats. There's only one plan. There's a
Yeah.
plan. There's plan A, and so that decision factor really gives you your why. Because if you
Yes.
know the why, the how is none of your business.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to show up.
You'll
You're
find
gonna
it.
figure out. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
gonna that's the one. I think a lot of us focus so much on the how. We need turn by turn direction. We need to know, like, 5 years, this is going to be okay. I'm gonna benefit reap the benefits of this decision that I made 5 years ago. The how is none of your business. It's easier, Steve Jobs says, it's easier to connect the dots looking backwards than it is
Hmm.
looking forward. And
Hmm.
so if we know the why, I think once I found out the why, the how started to come. It's almost like trusting the universe to provide too, right?
Yeah,
Because then it give you the guideline of the right people will show up. The
for
right
sure.
tools will show up. Once the student is ready, the teacher will appear. All these are just popping up, David. You must be
Yeah.
bringing
You're
this
you're
stuff out of
quoting like
me.
crazy.
You're bringing this stuff out of me.
Yes, I mean, what you said, and this is interesting. A lot of people will learn about different ways how they can market their business on social media. That's a how. That's
Yeah.
not a why. So they're inundated with things and they're marketing in every different part of the world or all over the way. But the point is, why are you doing it? That's what's important. And once you're doing it, you change the way you do things. And you don't have to do everything the same way as other people. Like for myself, I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram. That's a choice. That's a time usage choice for me. And it's like I put everything, all my work is really available to people through my website and they can find it from there. So I make it centralized. It's easier for me. It's easier for me to manage my time and it's easier for people who want to be in contact with me.
Yeah.
Now, I know that people have different styles of learning, but honestly, I don't want to fight the algorithm as to whether my content is good or not. I want people to decide when they connect with me. So that's a decision that I make. So the how, as you say, you decide what will work for you and don't get pulled by the world. And actually that's part of purpose, is that once you are on purpose, there's things you need to avoid. And that's being pulled off track by other people that are saying, well, you should do this, you should do that. But no, actually you feel you should go this way. And you have to
Yeah.
pay attention to that.
That is good. That is good. Thank you for sharing that. That
You're
resonates
welcome.
we'll talk about your night routine first, right? Because it
Okay.
leads to the morning routine.
Yes, it does. It does. And actually, this is great that we're able to tie your story a little bit, with all due respect, to my story about the marathon and yours about the half. Because to backtrack a little bit, in 2014, I had a rock climbing accident. I fell and I couldn't walk for 6 months because when I hit the ground, I damaged my spine,
Wow.
and that taught me. And we don't have a lot of time to talk about that, but the point is that I learned the importance of how I controlled my mind as part of that recovery. I
Mm.
didn't want to have an operation done, which even though the surgeon recommended it, I wanted to take the time to have my body heal completely. And so to me, to actually participate in a marathon 4 years later was super, super incredible, because I was going to test, could I run without hurting myself?
Right.
Would my back injury come back? Because you're running on the road, right? you know
That
hard road,
impact.
yeah, and with crowds of people, believe inside the crowds of people, but how is it going to do that? So after the marathon in 2018, I realized that there was something I was doing in my mind that seemed to be working really well. And there's a reason why it really came to a forefront was that 3 weeks before the marathon, okay, so this is in October 2018, I woke up one morning and it was my right knee. It was my right knee was sore. And I was like, hang on a second here. I don't feel like I can run anymore. I was thinking if I try and run, and normally it's a real ramp up at the end of your marathon. If I run more and I injure myself, I won't be able to go to Greece, and I won't be, I have the plane ticket and everything, and all the friends that are going to run with me are going to be there. I'm like, okay, so what do I do? So I decided in my mind that I would walk. So literally the last 3 weeks, I didn't even run. Okay. And I would walk each day and I would visualize myself doing the marathon.
Yeah.
And I looked online for photographs of the finish line, and I really worked mentally preparing myself to see the end point that I wanted to go to. Now, I had done all the training, and as a little bit of, as I mentioned earlier, why I did things differently. They say that you shouldn't run. Like I remember it's 42.125, I think, kilometers. Is that they say you shouldn't run more than 30 kilometers, I read online, before the marathon. And I was in my head, if I only run 30 kilometers and on the day I have to do more than 10 in addition, like 12 kilometers more,
Yeah.
that's huge psychologically in my head. So the longest I ran before the marathon was 36. And I'd done that prior to the 3 weeks. And when I woke up with the sore leg, the sore knee, I was like, okay, so I physically felt capable, but mentally I was training myself. And what I did was that I was working through my mind each time. Now to get to my morning and evening routine is that in the evening when I go to bed, something you alluded to already, is I write down in a notebook that I have, and actually this is an example of one of my notebooks. It's just a regular notebook, like a child's notebook from school. And I write down, it's very important to write it down because there's something to writing as against typing with our fingers. I don't want to have the electronic device around me. I write down different things that I'm grateful for in my life that happened that day. Like, for example, being on your podcast.
Nice.
And I go through that, and my moments are gratitude lasting at night before I get into bed. That's training my mind to focus on the positive and focus on the things that I want to keep in my life.
Right.
And it's in all different areas, whether it's relationships, whether it's in work. I cover those areas, what I'm inspired to write about. And then as I go to sleep, and you alluded to this a little bit, is when you talk about the brain waves, as we go into sleep, right? You know this stuff, and Edison was well aware of this. You move through alpha, we're in beta right now, alpha, theta, delta, right? So you're kind of in that foggy gray area where your subconscious mind is open. I'm programming myself right then because I'm talking to myself about the things that I want to have happen in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm using emotion I have to work on this. I still work on this. I'm pushing my mind to actually see things happening that haven't happened yet.
Yeah.
And I'm training it to be my reality. And sometimes, as I work through this process, I will fall asleep, but that's not bad. I'm falling asleep, focusing on things that I love. And in the morning, what I do is when I wake up, I reverse that. I go through the whole process before I open my eyes, thinking about those experiences like I did the night before. And then before I get out of bed, I write down about the things I want to have happen that day. And I write about them in the present tense as if they've already happened or are happening. So I'm having a wonderful experience doing the podcast with Lunide. I write it that way. Not I will, but I will write it down as it's in an ongoing experience. So it's a loop. It's a constant loop. And I've been doing this every day, morning and night.
For how long?
Since 2000, after the marathon 2018. So that's 3 years solid. Now, I have to tell you that sometimes it does kind of some crazy things happen. And I haven't shared this before in a podcast, but I can give you an example. Now, you might say this is a little bit strange. People listening might, if they're on the phone, they would hang up now. But honestly, I live in the south of France right now, and I had a property that I needed to sell, and it was struggling. The real estate market in France doesn't move necessarily that quickly. It's not like in North America. And what happened was one of the things that I was visualizing was that it was going to happen. The house was going to sell. The right person would show up and fall in love with it. Now, I have the notebook because I have tons of these notebooks. I have the notebook somewhere where now this is really amazing to me. I wrote down on a Saturday morning that the house, I don't know why I wrote it down, that the house was sold. I hadn't wrote down that the house is going to sell. I wrote that the house was sold. That Saturday, I got a phone call from a lady who wanted to see the property. Now, a lot of properties in France are sold directly between individuals, particular. It's directly. It's not necessarily a real estate agent. She called, she came to the home, she looked at the property, she had her sister with her. And why I'm smiling is when this is something that doesn't happen, she visited the house and right away she said she'd like to buy it. And I said, well, okay, how much would you like to pay? And she said, I'll pay exactly what you want for it. Now, when this whole thing happened, it was a couple of days later that I went back and went, I wrote this down somewhere and I found it in my notebook because I believed that it was going to happen. Now, this does sound a bit wild to a lot of people, but I have seen that happen in other parts of my life too.
Not to me. It's giving me chills because you're confirming the way I live my life. And I was just going to ask you, what have you seen? What are some of the strange things that you've manifested, right? That you've created and kind of welcome into your world? I mean, that was one of them.
That was one of them. And the marathon was crazy for me too, to complete the marathon, because not being a runner, starting on March the 7th, running on November the 11th, not being able to run 3 weeks before. Okay, add a little bit more to the craziness of the marathon. As part of the training for the marathon, I would go run on an empty stomach because I couldn't run when I had just eaten. Okay.
Me too.
Okay. And it really helped my body bring up energy. Other side of the thing is that when I was training, I was getting up at 6 a.m. and running when it was cooler before the sun was coming up, because it gets pretty hot in the south of France. And I was running as the temperature was building up during the year. So what happened was, I guess I didn't do enough research. Even though I was looking at the finish line and everything online, I didn't realize two things. One is that it's uphill the first part of the marathon.
Ouch.
Okay. Second thing is that it was sunny. And actually one of my friends, the one who invited me to the marathon, said, David, you should bring a hat. I'm so glad I wore a hat during the race. And I carried my water bottle with me all the way through because I didn't want to people were getting a sip of water and throwing a bottle. And the way I am towards the environment, I wasn't going to just chuck plastic everywhere. So I carried a bottle all the way through. But the other thing that was just amazing, Lunide, was that we got up at 6 a.m. to get the bus with everybody to go to marathon, and then the runs from there to Athens. Okay. By the time I started the race, because I'd never done a marathon before, not even a half marathon, nothing, I was in the worst qualifiers position at the very back. I think it was 18,000 people who ran. I was in a group of like 10,000 people at the back. By the time I started the race, it was 9:30. I hadn't eaten since 7 o'clock the previous morning. So when I started the marathon, I was a little bit hungry. But I ran the marathon and I completed the marathon. And to me, if somebody said ahead of time, you're going to run a marathon, it's going to be uphill, it's going to be sunny, and you won't have eaten for over, 14 hours, and you're going to do 42.25 kilometers, I'd say that's crazy. But I did.
You did.
And it's like everything pulled me through that. So I learned from multiple parts of that experience that I'm capable of things that I don't even think are possible. Right. So now I can find, for example, because in my knowledge of how the body works and that, if you do intermittent fasting, different ways of eating, I can stop eating and I don't die. Like, I'm very fortunate. I am a person who has access to food. Not everybody in the world does, and I respect that. But if I want to eat, I can eat, but I can stop eating and for, a day, 2 days, and it doesn't affect me negatively because I know in my mind what that experience is like.
Yeah. Same here. I go on random fast. I think I did one in January. My body, I didn't even know I was fasting. It was like until 3 days later, I was like, oh, I haven't eaten anything. And then it's like the body knows when it's time to take a break, it's time to reset. And it's powerful, and sometimes we just need to listen to it a little bit more, and we don't take that time, that space to listen in. And so your story is incredible. The things that you've been able to manifest, it's part of your visualization, right? Athletes do it. Chris Paul will say, I visualize the game, I visualize the game-winning shot. He plays basketball here in the state. A lot of hockey players, they say it's a big part. A lot of triathlons and marathoners too. They're always envisioning going through the finish line. They spend the time every day to see themselves successfully completing the race. There was a study done I don't know if you're aware of it. There was a study done where it was like half and half. They did the training, and then the other half actually visualized for 20 minutes that they're
Yes.
going through the training. They're going through the racing. They perform and out. They did better than the people who did train every day.
Yes. Can I give you an example of how I used that similar
Please,
idea?
yeah.
Because it's another thing like, now for people listening, this is not my story. This is, I believe, is everybody's story, because the things that you can do are, if you prepare your mind and you work on it. Now, the thing is, you have to dedicate yourself to building the habit over day by day by day. It's the compounding effect, like compound interest in a bank account. So I've been doing this for a long time, but it's helped prepare me. But I started at some point. You can start today, you can start tomorrow, but it compounds over time. I mentioned that about the rock climbing accident in 2014. I eventually got back into rock climbing. And when I started again in rock climbing, I decided, it was at the last minute, it was the week of it. I was actually in a group where I was training indoors. I prefer now to climb outside on the cliffs, but we was training inside, and there was a competition that was coming up on the Saturday. And on the Thursday, a couple of people in there's an adult section, the children's section, said, why don't you just take part in the actual competition? And I thought, oh, what the heck, I'll just do it anyway. But they said you have to grump on tet, you have to climb what we call in English, you have to open the route, meaning you have to climb up the route and you hook in as you go up. There's not a rope on the top, right? And so I learned that the week before I actually went into the competition. And I'd only been climbing where there's a rope and someone's securing me on the rope and then climbing up it's like there's like pins on the wall. And I entered the competition on the Saturday morning. I was there helping with the children's competition. And then I knew I was going to be in the competition in the afternoon, Lunide. And what happened was I went home at 11 o'clock. Adults competition was supposed to start at 1:20. It was a little bit late when it started. But I went home and I lay on the couch and I visualized all that time. And I didn't eat. I visualized me actually able to go up each one of the routes that I needed to do.
Yeah.
And I went back that afternoon. I did all the routes. And afterwards, they accumulated all the points for all the adults. And now this is the amazing part of it. I didn't believe it. I actually finished first in the competition.
Wow.
And I had this was like an altered world experience, like, the multiverse kind of thing. Like I was like, when they call my name out, because they call it, third and second in mine, I was like, because it was in French, right? Like,
Yeah.
I was like almost doubting myself.
Did I hear that right?
Like, say what? It's me? Like, it is. And so there was a bunch of gifts and prizes that I won, but part of it was the physical training, the belief, but it was also the mental training, like you said. So this stuff does work. And if I encourage everybody that's, you're really doing it. For anybody who's thinking about stuff that's listening, just give it a shot. Now, it doesn't happen overnight. This is not a hack. You can't hack parenting. You can't hack relationships. You got to be all in. You got to be in the experience long-term, and things will work out. But we're talking about your life.
Yeah.
We're talking about the commitment that you want to do. Like if somebody wants to start a business and they say, well, I want to build a business because I'm going to exit in 2 years and have a lot of money. I say you're doing the wrong business. The business you need to do is the business you want to do forever.
Right.
It's the long term. Now, and then if you have to change directions, you do, but like in relationships, but the point is that it's something that you're really committed to. The commitment will give you the motivation, which will move you along the pathway to your goals, which will lead you to your endpoint.
Mr. Hennessy, well said. This is just phenomenal stuff. And I'm recharged with this conversation. I do have to say that. We're going a bit longer, but I am super recharged.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's confirmation that it doesn't have to be hard. It's confirmation that if you visualize it, add the self-belief in there and take the time to find your purpose. And it doesn't have to be a hustle and bustle. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a challenge. And that's what you are confirming here by sharing the story, even with the racing, how you're able to finish. It was just visualizing. You walked for 3 weeks before you ran the marathon. Yeah. But you visualized yourself going through it. And the brain kicks in. That's the power of our brilliant mind.
Yeah.
We undermine its power, and you just kind of emphasize it. So visualization is a piece of my morning routine. So let's talk about your morning routine. How do you get up, dress up, and show up?
Okay. When the morning when I wake up, I mentioned what I do before I get out of bed.
You
Like
reverse
yourself,
it.
yeah. And then I have water to drink right away as well.
Yeah.
And then the very first thing I will do, it's my little bit of a version of stretching. It's kind of like pieces of yoga and different things that I do to move my body.
Yeah.
And the very next thing that I do every day, and it's especially important to me, it's very symbolic as well as physical. I go for a walk. And that's because when I couldn't walk, it's just the fact the first time I was able to walk around the block after not being able to walk without intense pain for 6 months, it has great meaning to me just to get outside and to move. And on my day, I always have my day planned ahead of time, meaning
Right.
but there's a key here. Something I think is really important for people to remember. I'm not an obsessive planner. I leave big spaces in my day in the sense that I allow like the ebb and flow of life to take place. I always leave time to connect with family and friends. I don't plan things out. So there's spaces. As I like to share with people, music has gaps that are silenced that make the music beautiful. If music was just the notes, it would be all noise. You need to have the space. So even though people might think that, oh, David's constantly focusing on his mind, no, I leave spaces between. There's routines and there's gaps, and that reduces an enormous amount of stress in my life because I used to be a person who would get very, very stressed out,
Mhm.
like bonkers. Okay, like I get wired over things, and now it's like I let it go. But I see the world very, very differently. But
Yeah.
that's come from active working on the process over time and then engaging in some habits that I learned over the years. I've been blessed by many people. You've mentioned a number of people yourself that I'm aware of, and I've dabbled in learning from different people. But I also, if I hear something new, let's see if it resonates for me. Like, was that going to work for me? Because most things do, like I say, the wonder technique. Like, I don't know anybody who can get by without drinking water. Like, some people make all kinds of excuses and say, I can drink orange juice, tea, coffee. And I'm like, no, no, they're not the same thing for your body. So you need to identify that. But some people will find a different way, for example, to drinking water. There's a different way. Someone will drink out of a bottle. They carry a cup, a glass bottle. Like, there's different approaches. You personalize the experience. Like, and also when exercise, this is something else I'm sharing, is that I hike and its byproduct is exercise. Some people dance. Their byproduct is
Right.
exercise. Some people go to the gym. Some people do marathons, Ironman. They have a different way of expressing it in their life. So find something that you love to do and call it exercise. So
Mhm.
it's important that you integrate things into your life the way, because if you're running with friends and you actually don't like to run, cycle beside them, use a skateboard, rollerblades, whatever it is you want to do, if you want to be involved in that activity with them, or do something else. Make sure you're
Mhm.
doing something you love, because as you probably know, Lunid, if you're doing something against what you like to do, it kind of sets up a barrier in your head. You're fighting yourself,
Yeah.
and you're likely maybe to even injure yourself. I had one friend tell me recently that they had a lot of regret because they promised to go on a biking trip with a friend because they didn't want to disappoint the friend. But in fact, they didn't want to go on a biking trip. And it was so painful for them because they were doing something they didn't want to do. So it's really
Going against
important
the
that we
grain.
follow our feeling.
Going against the grain. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You gotta with the flow. You gotta go with the flow. And then you said something that I wanna close off with before.
Yeah.
And it's you think about what you want in your life. Don't think about the things you don't want in your life. Think about the things that you do want. Like you said, making that exercise yours. People don't think about dancing as exercising or skating as exercising,
Mm-hmm.
taking a walk as exercising. And for someone like you who couldn't walk and now has the ability to walk, it's an honor for you. It's a privilege, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a right. It's a privilege
Yes.
to walk. And then just being able to pinpoint what is it that you like doing and then call it exercise. Make sure you moving the body. You do have to move the body. So or else it will break down on you. The
Yeah.
back pain, all that will kick in, the headaches. And then if that happens, then you are not living
Exactly.
your optimal self. So this is really, really something that we wanted to hear. And I'm so excited you made the time. So tell us, how can we connect with you? Where can we find you?
Okay. As always, the secret is in the simplicity. It's thewondertechnique.com, THEWONDER, TECHNIQUE.com. Everything is there on my website. Even there's a connection there to some short videos that I've done. And there's also access to the 9 ebooks that I've written. And there's a blog. And then people, here's the bonus here. If people go, I have to remember this, on my website, if people decide they want to become a member of my newsletter, not only will they get the newsletter, they also get a ton of gifts. There's an ebook that's 10 Steps to Health and Happiness. There's mini motivational cards they can print off, Lunide, that they can stick in their pocket or give to a loved one. There's also a better sleeping checklist, a better relationship checklist. There's a whole bunch of things, like a bunch of gifts that people get freely when they go to my website. So
that
if they
is
take the
fantastic.
time, yeah.
That is fantastic. Man, ladies and gentlemen, this has been David Hennessy. I mean, what a great conversation. And the holistic personal self-development program, the Wonder Technique. And David has one mission: to give the fundamental tools of personal development to everyone around the world. And this conversation has been a highlight of that. You came up, you show up for us. We thank you for all that the insight you brought forward today. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Lunide, it's been my honor, and thank you for giving me your time and the people that are giving me their time by listening.
Fantastic.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please comment and tell us what was your favorite part, your favorite habit that you are going to try out for yourself today. Comment below. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. Until next time, I will see you at the top of your best morning routine ever. Stay blessed.